The Starforge Academy was not just another school. It was a place where legends were born and the weak were erased. The training grounds stretched wider than cities, built with towering steel walls, hidden jungles, artificial deserts, and endless arenas where death was not a possibility but an expectation. Every cadet who stepped through its iron gates carried the weight of their entire species. For most, the academy was the last step before becoming a commander of fleets. For others, it was the graveyard of ambition. On the first morning of selection, hundreds of alien cadets marched in. Their boots struck the ground in perfect rhythm. Armor clinked. Plasma rifles glowed on their backs. Their faces were filled with grim determination. They had trained for years, some since childhood, for this moment. And then, the noise of their march faltered, because among the tall, armored figures walked someone who did not belong. A human girl, shorter, lighter, and clearly unarmed. She wasn't sweating under heavy gear. She wasn't carrying a plasma blade or wearing reinforced armor. Instead, she held a small fabric bag tucked under her arm. A faint smell drifted out. Sweet, comforting, completely out of place here. Snacks. First, no one spoke. Then, laughter exploded. A horned reptilian cadet leaned forward, sneering. Is this a joke? Did someone send us a cook instead of a warrior? Another cadet with metal-plated skin snorted. She came to feed us, not fight beside us. Look at her. Fragile bones. No claws. No fangs. No strength. The laughter grew louder. Some cadets slapped their knees. Some pointed openly. A few even mimicked her walk as if she was some kind of comedy act placed in the middle of warriors. But the girl did not react. She didn't shout. She didn't glare. She didn't even look embarrassed. She simply opened her bag, pulled out a piece of dried fruit, and began to chew calmly, as if their laughter was nothing more than background noise. Crunch, crunch. The sound cut through the courtyard strangely sharp. For a second, the laughter thinned. Then it returned, angrier this time. The instructors standing on the high balcony didn't laugh, but even they looked puzzled. They had seen many new recruits, strong, desperate, brutal, but never someone who looked so ordinary. Yet the fact that she was here meant something. The academy never admitted by mistake. The head instructor stepped forward. His voice boomed like thunder across the field. Cadets, you believe you are warriors. You think years of training have made you strong. But strength is nothing here. Pride will break. Fear will break. Most of you will fail. Some of you will die. This academy chooses only the ones who can endure what others cannot. The cadets shouted back in unison, pounding fists to chests. For glory, for honor, for survival. Only the human girl stayed quiet. She didn't shout. She didn't even move. She just slipped another snack into her mouth, watching with calm eyes. Her silence felt heavier than any battle cry. Then came the announcement of the first trial, the Wild Zone. Gates opened on the far side of the compound, revealing a vast artificial jungle. Mist rolled out. Shapes moved in the fog. Low growls echoed from the trees. The air smelled of blood and damp earth. This was no simple obstacle course. The Wild Zone was designed to break cadets, to test who could survive without mercy. The alien recruits tightened their grips on weapons. Blades hissed as they slid free. Plasma rifles hummed with power. Some sharpened their claws, others slammed fists together, eager for the fight. And then, quietly, the girl adjusted her bag strap and stepped forward. No armor, no weapon, only her small pack of snacks. A scaled cadet scoffed. She will not last 1 hour. Another muttered. She will beg to be let out before the sun sets. But as they all marched into the mist, a strange unease rippled through them. Because while everyone else carried tension in their eyes, only the human looked calm. No fear in her steps. No hesitation in her breathing. She walked as though she had entered a park, not a jungle filled with death. And in the back of a few cadets' minds, a troubling thought whispered. What if she knew something they didn't? The moment the cadets stepped into the Wild Zone, the sounds of the academy courtyard faded away. The steel gates slammed shut behind them with a thunderous echo, sealing their fate. In front of them stretched an alien jungle, thick with trees twisted like claws, their roots crawling over the ground like serpents. Strange glowing plants pulsed faint light, casting ghostly shadows on the fog. The air was heavy, moist, and filled with the smell of wet earth and something metallic, blood. The cadets moved cautiously. Their years of training had taught them one thing: the wild zone was alive. Everything here, from the trees to the air itself, was a predator. The reptilian warrior took the lead, raising his plasma blade high. "Stay sharp," he hissed. "The jungle will test us immediately." The others followed in tight formation, weapons at the ready. They moved like soldiers, scanning every shadow, every rustle in the leaves. Their bodies were tense, their breathing shallow. And then there was her. The human girl walked in the middle of the group, her boots light on the damp soil. She didn't carry a weapon. She didn't scan the shadows. Instead, she reached into her bag, unwrapped a small bar, and began chewing slowly as though she was on a casual stroll. Her calmness was so out of place that even the predators seemed hesitant to approach. One cadet snarled at her. "Are you trying to get yourself killed? Stop making noise." She glanced at him, shrugged, and kept chewing. The jungle suddenly stirred. From the canopy above, glowing eyes blinked open. A deep growl shook the trees. Something massive shifted in the shadows. The cadets froze, weapons raised. Then, with a roar, the first predator leapt. It was a beast twice the size of a horse, its skin armored with chitin plates, claws glistening like blades. Crashed into the group, scattering cadets in every direction. Plasma fire lit up the mist, burning holes into the undergrowth. The beast moved with terrifying speed, swiping 2 cadets off their feet before disappearing back into the fog. Panic spread. "Hold formation!" shouted one of the larger aliens, but his voice cracked with fear. The wild zone had no respect for formation. The jungle wanted chaos. The human girl, however, didn't panic. She crouched near the ground, quietly pulling something from her bag. Not a weapon, not armor, just a small piece of dried meat. While the beast circled, its glowing eyes darting through the mist, she tossed the food into the undergrowth. The predator froze. Its nose twitched. Slowly, cautiously, it stalked toward the smell. A low rumble echoed from its chest, not of rage, but curiosity. It sniffed the meat, licked it once, and then devoured it in one bite. The cadets stared in shock. Their weapons still hummed with deadly energy, but none of them had managed to slow the beast. She had distracted it with food. Another predator's growl echoed, this one closer. More shapes moved in the fog. The cadets tightened their grips. Fear rose in their throats. She pulled out another snack. "What is she doing?" whispered one of the cadets, his scaled hands trembling on his blade. But when the next predator lunged, she tossed the snack in the opposite direction. The beast skidded to a halt, sniffing, then bounded after the treat instead of the cadets. The group exhaled in disbelief. The human girl dusted off her hands. "Sometimes," she said softly, almost to herself, "it's better to feed the hunger than fight it." The cadets exchanged stunned looks. For the first time since stepping into the jungle, they were not mocking her. They were unsettled. As the group pressed deeper, the predators grew bolder. Growls circled them. Snapping branches echoed from every direction. The air itself vibrated with danger. Yet the strange pattern repeated. Every time a predator closed in, she used a piece of food to redirect it. While the others sweated and bled from close encounters, she walked calmly, her bag slowly emptying. One of the metal-skinned cadets muttered, "This isn't strength, it's luck. It can't work forever." But deep down, he felt something he refused to admit. Without her, they might already be dead. Hours passed. The group staggered under the weight of exhaustion. Their muscles burned, their weapons overheated, and their pride cracked. But the human girl still walked lightly, her calm step steady. She offered snacks to those collapsing from hunger. At first, they refused, sneering. Later, when their stomachs growled louder than their pride, some quietly accepted. The wild zone was supposed to break them, but instead it was breaking their image of her. By the time the sun-like light above the dome began to fade, the cadets realized something unthinkable. They had survived the first day not because of their weapons or their years of training, but because of the girl they had mocked. And though no one said it aloud, every pair of eyes watched her differently now, as if wondering who exactly was she. The wild zone had silenced many voices. Hours ago, the cadets had laughed at the human girl. They had mocked her size, her calmness, and her bag of snacks. To them, she was a joke in the company of warriors. But after the jungle trials, the laughter was thinner. Every beast that had lunged from the shadows, every predator that had circled them, had been drawn away not by plasma fire or sharpened blades, but by the simple tricks of a girl with food in her hands. Still, pride dies slowly. When they returned to the temporary camp that night, some cadets collapsed against tree roots, nursing bruises and scratches. Others sat sharpening weapons with trembling hands, hiding how shaken they were. The air smelled of blood, sweat, and the damp rot of the jungle. The instructors had not returned. They never did. Survival meant relying on each other, and the cadets knew this. Yet the human girl sat calmly by the dim glow of a bioluminescent plant, chewing another piece of dried fruit. Her posture was relaxed, her eyes half closed, as though she were sitting in a garden instead of a predator's lair. The reptilian warrior scowled. "Don't think you impressed anyone. You didn't fight. You distracted. That is not strength." Another cadet nodded sharply. "We trained for years with weapons and drills. You fed animals. Tricks will not make you a soldier." But there was no laughter in their words anymore. Only unease. The girl didn't argue. She simply broke a small piece of her snack and held it out. One of the smaller cadets, a thin avian creature whose wing arms trembled with exhaustion, hesitated. Hunger gnawed at him harder than pride. Finally, he reached out, grabbed the piece and swallowed it in silence. No one laughed. The night grew darker, filled with distant howls and the low rumble of beasts. Cadets took turns on watch. Their bodies were weary, but no one dared sleep deeply. The human girl, however, lay down calmly, her bag tucked under her head like a pillow. Her breathing was slow, steady, fearless. And strangely, the predators stayed away from their camp. Some whispered that perhaps the beasts smelled her food and avoided them. Others whispered darker thoughts. Perhaps the predators feared her, not the snacks. When dawn came, the jungle glistened with mist. The second trial began immediately. This time, it wasn't predators. It was exhaustion. The cadets were ordered to march through the shifting terrain for hours without rest. The jungle changed constantly. Dense vines, sharp rocks, sudden swamps that swallowed legs whole. The cadets stumbled, dragged themselves forward, sweat dripping down their armor. Their weapons grew heavy, their breaths shallow. Pride could not carry them forever. But the human girl kept walking. Light steps, calm face. She didn't look stronger than them. She didn't look faster. Yet she didn't tire as quickly. Each time a cadet slowed, she offered a bite of her food. Some spat at the offer. Others, desperate, accepted. And to their shock, her snacks gave energy that training rations could not. One cadet, his chest heaving, finally muttered, "Why are you helping us? You should let the weak fall." The girl only smiled faintly. A leader doesn't walk alone. A leader walks with others. The words hit harder than any weapon. The cadets exchanged uneasy looks. Leadership wasn't something taught easily, it was earned. And in the silence of the jungle, they realized something frightening. The group already moved in her rhythm. Without shouting, without commands, she had set the pace. By the third day, the tone had shifted completely. The ones who had laughed at her now walked behind her. They still muttered, still tried to deny it, but when predators circled, they glanced at her. When exhaustion crushed them, they reached for the food she offered. And when fear clawed at their chests, her calm breathing steadied them. But not all were convinced. The reptilian warrior, still seething with pride, hissed at the others when the girl was out of earshot. "This is weakness disguised as kindness. She feeds you so you forget your training." A true warrior needs no snacks, no tricks. We need power, not comfort. Yet even as he spoke, his eyes betrayed doubt. He had seen her tame the jungle with calm hands where his blades had failed. That night, as they camped again, the shift became undeniable. A fight broke out between two cadets over food rations. They snarled, pushing each other, their claws flashing. The others tried to separate them, but it was the human girl who simply walked up, placed her bag between them, and offered pieces of food. The fight ended not in blood, but in quiet chewing. It was absurd. It was humiliating, but it worked. The cadets sat in silence, staring at her as if she were something alien herself. They had trained for years to master strength, fear, and battle. Yet here was a human girl who had mastered something they had never valued: patience, calmness, and the ability to bring others together. By the time the campfire flickered low, the truth could not be ignored. The one they had mocked now carried something none of them had: authority that wasn't demanded but given freely. She didn't order. She didn't boast. She didn't fight for control. And still, they followed her. The jungle trials had broken many cadets. Some had limped back with deep wounds. Others had been carried away unconscious, marked as failures. Only a fraction remained, and even they were tired shadows of their former pride. But the human girl still walked with light steps. Her bag was lighter now, almost empty, but her calmness had not changed. In fact, it had grown heavier, like a weight pressing on the others. They no longer laughed at her. They no longer mocked her snacks. Instead, they watched her in silence, confused and unwilling to admit what their hearts already knew. She was becoming the center of their group. On the fourth day, the instructors announced the next trial. It was not survival. It was not endurance. It was leadership. The cadets were led into a vast arena carved into the jungle floor. High walls rose above them, wrapped with thorny vines. The ground was marked with trenches and barriers. In the center, glowing pylons crackled with energy, simulating the chaos of a battlefield. The lead instructor's voice thundered from above. Strength wins battles, but leadership wins wars. Today, each of you will be tested. You will lead a squad into combat against simulated enemies. Those who can unite their team will advance. Those who cannot will be left behind. The announcement sent a wave of tension through the cadets. They glanced at each other, their eyes sharp. For years, each had dreamed of this moment, to prove they could command. Now, their futures balanced on this trial. The squads were divided. Some cadets shouted their authority instantly, barking orders and demanding obedience. The reptilian warrior roared, slamming his blade into the ground, declaring himself leader. Another cadet with metal skin pounded his chest, promising glory to those who followed him. But when eyes turned to the human girl, she did not raise her voice. She did not claim leadership. She only sat on a rock near her squad, pulling out the last of her food. The cadets in her group looked uneasy. "Who leads us?" one whispered. She tore a piece of bread in half and passed it to him. "Eat first," she said softly. "No soldier fights well on an empty stomach." The words were simple, but they carried something stronger than commands: care. One by one, the cadets around her accepted the food. And with each bite, something strange happened. They relaxed. Their shoulders loosened, their eyes steadied. When the battle simulation began, chaos erupted. The other squads rushed into the arena like storms. Leaders barked orders, pushing their teams forward. Plasma fire lit the air. Explosions shook the ground, and holographic enemies surged from every direction. But pride turned to weakness. Some squads fractured when cadets refused to obey harsh leaders. Others collapsed when their leaders charged recklessly, leaving soldiers exposed. The human girl's squad moved differently. She didn't shout. She didn't command. She listened. When one cadet suggested flanking, she nodded. When another spotted a weakness in the enemy formation, she encouraged him to lead the strike. She didn't stand above them. She stood among them. And slowly, without realizing it, her squad moved as one. Their attacks flowed naturally, their defenses held firm. Where others panicked, they stayed calm. When a cadet stumbled, she was the one to pull him up, steadying him with a hand and a quiet word. Even the instructors noticed. They leaned forward on the balcony, eyes narrowing. This was not the way squads were usually led. Yet it was working better than most. The reptilian warrior's squad fell apart first. His roars of command turned into screams of frustration as his soldiers broke formation. The metal-skinned cadet tried to force his team forward with threats, but half of them abandoned him mid-battle. Only the human girl's squad advanced steadily, sweeping enemies aside with coordination that seemed almost unthinkable for a group of strangers. At one point, the simulation unleashed a massive war drone, towering over the battlefield with cannons blazing. Cadets screamed, scrambling for cover. Several squads were wiped out instantly. Her squad froze, fear gripping them. All eyes turned to her. She did not draw a weapon. She did not shout for courage. Instead, she smiled faintly and whispered, "We've come this far together. We can finish this together." The words were quiet, but they struck deeper than any battle cry. Her squad rallied. They flanked the drone, coordinated strikes hitting its weak points until it collapsed in a burst of sparks. Silence followed. When the simulation ended, smoke drifted across the arena floor. Most squads were broken, their leaders shamed. But the human girl's squad stood together, steady and unbroken. The lead instructor's voice echoed, heavy with disbelief. Out of all units, only one completed the task without collapse. Every eye turned to her. The cadets who had once mocked her now stared with wide, uneasy eyes. Some looked away in shame, remembering their laughter. Others looked at her with a strange mix of fear and respect. The human girl brushed dirt off her hands, tucking the empty bag under her arm. She had led without asking for leadership. She had won without lifting a blade. And in that moment, even the proudest cadets began to realize, the one they had called weakest was the only one strong enough to hold them together. The academy never gave warnings. The cadets who survived the leadership trial were not given time to rest or even to breathe. As soon as the simulation ended, the instructors ordered them into another arena. One larger, darker, and strangely silent. The walls here were higher, and the air hummed with hidden energy. The cadets exchanged uneasy glances. Their bodies were bruised, their pride shaken, but they forced themselves to stand tall. None wanted to show weakness. The human girl walked in with her usual calm steps, her empty snack bag folded neatly under her arm. She looked smaller than ever in the massive space, but her eyes remained steady, watching the shadows as though she already knew what was coming. A heavy gate opened with a deep rumble. The ground shook. Dust rained down from the high walls. Something stirred inside the darkness. The instructors' voices boomed overhead. Every warrior believes they are strong until they face the breaking point. Today you will fight the beast of the arena. Defeat it or be destroyed. The air vibrated with the roar that followed. Out of the gate thundered a creature that dwarfed every cadet. Its armored body glistened like black steel. Its claws dug furrows into the dirt, and its eyes glowed like molten fire. Rows of jagged teeth lined its massive jaw. This was no hologram, no simulation. This was alive, a war beast bred only for destruction. The cadets froze in terror. Even the reptilian warrior, who had mocked the human girl since the beginning, took a step back. The beast's presence crushed their pride into fear. Then chaos erupted. Cadets screamed as the monster charged. Plasma rifles fired in desperate blasts. Blades sparked against its armor, and battle cries turned into cries of panic. The beast swept through them like a storm, tossing bodies aside with swipes of its claws. The reptilian warrior roared and slashed at its leg, but the blade barely scratched the armor. The metal-skinned cadet fired again and again until his weapon overheated. Nothing worked. The beast slammed its tail into the ground, sending shockwaves through the arena. Cadets scattered, some lying broken, others too afraid to move. And in the middle of the chaos stood the human girl. She did not fire a rifle. She did not draw a blade. She simply watched the beast with curious eyes, tilting her head as though studying a puzzle. While others fought with rage, She stood still, her breathing calm. "Move!" shouted one of the cadets. "You'll be killed." But she didn't move. She reached into her folded bag and pulled out her last piece of food, a small dried fruit, barely enough for a bite. She looked at it for a moment, then at the war beast that shook the earth with every step. When the beast turned toward her, jaws opening wide, the cadets screamed. They expected her to run. Instead, she tossed the piece of food forward. It bounced once on the ground, rolling toward the monster's massive claws. The beast paused. Its molten eyes flickered. It lowered its massive head, sniffing the fruit. The arena went silent except for the sound of its deep breathing. Then, with one careful motion, it licked the fruit into its mouth. Seconds stretched into eternity. The cadets stared, their weapons trembling in their hands. The beast chewed once, then twice. His body relaxed. The fire in its eyes dimmed. Slowly, impossibly, it lowered its head until it was level with the girl. The arena floor shook as it settled onto its knees, bowing to her like a loyal hound. Silence fell so heavy it was almost unbearable. The instructors did not speak. The cadets could only stare. The reptilian warrior dropped his blade, his jaw hanging open. Even the strongest fighters, who had spent years training to kill, could not believe what they were seeing. The human girl reached out with a calm hand, touching the beast's armored snout. It rumbled, not in anger, but in something almost like contentment. She patted it gently, her faint smile never leaving her face. "You don't always need to fight," she said softly, though her voice carried through the hushed arena. "Sometimes you only need to be understood." The words struck harder than any weapon. For years, the academy had taught that survival meant strength, that leadership meant power. But in that moment, every cadet realized something terrifyingly clear. She had achieved what none of them could. She had not defeated the beast. She had tamed it. The arena gates closed slowly, echoing with finality. The war beast lay still beside her, choosing her presence over violence. The instructors finally spoke, their voices heavy with disbelief. "The trial is complete. One cadet has succeeded where all others failed." Every eye turned toward her, not with laughter, not with doubt, but with something new: respect, fear, wonder. And as she stood there, small against the massive shadow of the beast, the truth settled into every heart present. The girl who had brought snacks was no longer just a recruit. She was something else entirely. The arena remained silent long after the beast had bowed. Cadets who had once mocked her stood frozen, their weapons limp in their hands. The war beast, bred for killing, crouched calmly at the human girl's side, its massive head resting close to her like a loyal guardian. The girl stroked its armored snout as though she were comforting a pet. From the high balcony, the instructors watched with unreadable faces. They had seen cadets rise and fall, legends made and broken. But never had they seen this. The breaking point was designed to crush pride, to show that no one could survive without pure strength and battle skill. Yet here was a human girl who had not just survived. She had changed the rules of the trial itself. The lead instructor's voice finally broke the silence, deep and heavy. "Cadets, the beast has chosen. The trial is complete." The words rippled through the group like a storm. One of the metal-skinned cadets dropped to his knees, staring at her in disbelief. Another, the avian with trembling wings, bowed his head without thinking, as if his body already knew who the real leader was. Even those still standing felt their pride collapse under the weight of the truth. The reptilian warrior was the last to resist. His chest heaved, his claws dug furrows into the dirt, his eyes burned with anger. This is not strength," he shouted, his voice cracking with desperation. "This is weakness. She fed a monster. She tricked it. The beast lifted its head and growled low, the sound shaking the arena walls. The reptilian fell silent instantly, his pride breaking under the beast's judgment. The human girl did not gloat. She did not raise her voice in triumph. She only stood quietly, the faintest smile on her lips, as if she had expected this all along. The instructors descended from the balcony. Their boots struck the dirt with authority as they approached the cadets. The lead instructor, a towering alien with glowing eyes, stopped before the girl. For a long moment he studied her face. "Human," he said slowly, "you entered this academy carrying no weapon. You were mocked, doubted, and dismissed. Yet you stand here while others fall. Tell me, what is your strength?" The girl looked around at the cadets. They stared back with wide, uncertain eyes, some filled with shame, some with awe. She touched the empty snack bag at her side, then placed her hand gently on the beast's snout. "My strength," she said softly, "is not mine alone. It's what happens when we survive together, when we stop fighting each other and start trusting each other." The words were simple, yet they echoed louder than any battle cry. The instructor's glowing eyes narrowed, then softened. He turned to the rest of the cadets and spoke with finality. "From this moment, this human will lead you. She is the commander of this unit." Gasps rose from the group. Some cadets lowered their heads in disbelief. Others clenched their fists, pride twisting into shame. But none dared challenge the decision. The beast at her side ensured silence, but more than that, the truth ensured it. They all knew she had achieved what no one else could. The reptilian warrior finally dropped to one knee, his tusks scraping the dirt. His voice was low, bitter but sincere. "Commander!" One by one, the others followed. The arena floor filled with bowed heads. The sound of their armor shifting, the weight of their pride breaking. It was louder than any applause. The girl stood quietly among them, her face calm. She did not bask in their submission. She simply accepted it, as though leadership had never been her goal but was only the natural path forward. The instructors raised their voices once more. "This academy has forged leaders through blood and fire. But today, it forged something greater. A leader who commands not with fear, but with unity. Remember this moment. Remember who walked and mocked, and now walks out leading." The cadets lifted their heads slowly, their eyes meeting hers. No longer did they see her as fragile or foolish or weak. They saw her as the one who had endured every trial not with brute force, but with unshakable calm. The war beast rumbled low beside her, a living symbol of her triumph. And as the arena gates opened, the human girl stepped forward first. The cadets followed behind her in silence, no longer questioning, no longer mocking. The unit had found its leader. The one who had brought snacks now carried their respect. The gates of the arena opened with a deep groan, metal grinding against stone. A shaft of light cut across the battlefield, shining through the mist, falling first on the human girl who stood calmly at the front. Behind her, the cadets shifted uncertainly. Days ago, they had mocked her. Hours ago, they had doubted her. But now, their bodies moved almost unconsciously in rhythm with hers. Where she stepped, they followed. Where she paused, they waited. She had not ordered them to do this. They had chosen it without even realizing. The war beast, too, lingered near the gate. Its glowing eyes followed her. Not the instructors, not the others. It rumbled low in its chest, almost protective. It would not leave the arena, but it would remember her. The instructors raised their hands for silence. The courtyard filled with cadets from other units, instructors, and even academy officials who had come to witness the end of trials. Their eyes widened at the sight. A human girl unarmed, walking out of the breaking point trial at the head of a squad that looked humbled, united, and strangely loyal. The lead instructor's voice boomed, carrying across the courtyard. "Behold the unit that survived. Not through pride, not through power, but through something far rarer." His words echoed, and then the silence returned. All eyes fixed on the human girl. She stepped forward, her bag now empty, but her calm smile unbroken. She did not look like a soldier hardened by years of training. She did not look like a champion forged in blood. She looked ordinary. Yet everyone who had walked beside her knew the truth. Nothing about her was ordinary anymore. The reptilian warrior, once loudest in his mockery, walked behind her with lowered head. His tusks scraped the ground as he muttered words no one had ever expected from him. "Commander!" The word rippled through the squad. One by one, cadets repeated it, their voices low at first, then louder. "Commander! Commander!" Until the whole unit's voices blended into a chant that carried through the academy walls. The other cadets, watching from the sidelines, looked shaken. They had trained for years, yet none of their leaders had earned such loyalty. What they witnessed now was something terrifying and inspiring. Leadership not forced but given freely. The girl did not raise her hands to bask in the chant. She only nodded once, quietly acknowledging it, and kept walking. The path through the academy stretched long and straight, lined with flags of different alien species. Each flag represented pride, culture, and sacrifice. The human girl walked past them with light steps, her head steady. The others followed behind, and for the first time, they looked like a true unit, not a collection of rivals, but a single body with a single heartbeat. The instructors exchanged looks. Some were frowning, some were nodding. They knew the truth. What had just happened was not part of the design. No one had planned for a cadet like her. She had broken the rules of the academy without even trying. When they reached the central plaza, the head instructor stopped them. His glowing eyes swept across the silent crowd. "This academy has tested cadets for centuries," he declared. "We have forged commanders who ruled fleets, generals who conquered worlds. But today we saw something new. We saw a cadet who reminded us that power is not only in claws or plasma. It can also live in calm, in patience, in the will to stand when others fall." He turned to the human girl. For the first time, there was no trace of superiority in his gaze. Only respect. "You came here mocked. You leave here as commander." The crowd erupted. Some cheered. Some remained silent, too shaken to respond. But no one denied it. The cadets behind her stood straighter, their heads high, as though her presence gave them strength. Even those who still carried doubt did not resist. Something deeper than pride bound them now. The girl took a slow breath, then turned to face her squad. Her voice was calm, steady, but carried across the plaza. "Do not follow me because an instructor told you. Do not follow me because a beast bowed to me. Follow me only if you believe we are stronger together than we are apart." The silence after her words was heavy, then broken by the sound of armor shifting. Every cadet in her unit stepped forward, one after another, choosing to stand at her side. Not out of fear, not out of duty, out of choice. The chant rose again, "Commander! Commander!" And for the first time, she allowed herself a small, true smile. The academy gates opened wide, revealing the starlit sky beyond. She walked out first, her steps light, steady, unshaken. The cadets followed in perfect formation, not forced, but willing. The other units, the instructors, the officials, everyone watched in silence as the human girl who had carried only snacks walked out as the leader of warriors. In that moment, one truth echoed in every mind. The galaxy's strongest were not always the loudest or the fiercest or the most armed. Sometimes the strongest was the one who could walk calmly into chaos and leave with everyone following behind.